At last, Simon Cowell explains why Bob Dylan's voice would buzz in 10 seconds. Bob Dylan is not hated by Simon Cowell. He simply knows that if a 23-year-old Bob Dylan entered an X Factor audition room in 2025 with a guitar, a harmonica, and that voice, he would be gone before he finished the first verse of Blowin' in the Wind. He knows this with the icy certainty of a man who has instantly made teenagers into millionaires. Cowell said it personally on a quiet Thursday afternoon in Los Angeles, sitting in the same black leather chair he's used for 20 years of judging. For a private podcast interview that was released online in a matter of hours, there was only one microphone, no live audience, and no cameras. "I'm going to say something that will make half the internet want to burn me at the stake," he began, smiling the way only Simon can. "If Bob Dylan auditioned for me tomorrow, exactly the way he sounded in 1963, I would buzz him. Right away. And I'd probably respond, 'Thank you, next.'" He stopped, letting the silence hang like smoke. "And I would be completely mistaken. But I would still do it." That single sentence, delivered with Cowell's typical half smile, half shrug, has now been viewed 42 million times across TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. Music teachers are drafting essays. "Simon Cowell just ended his career" is the title of reaction videos created by Dylan fans. And somewhere in Malibu, an 84-year-old icon with a Nobel Prize on his shelf is probably chuckling into his coffee. So why would the man who discovered One Direction, Kelly Clarkson, and Leona Lewis reject the greatest songwriter of the 20th century? Cowell explained it in brutally straightforward ways. "Talent shows are not about finding the best artist in the world," he remarked. "They are about discovering the artist that the world is currently ready to fall in love with." In 90 seconds. It was a Tuesday evening, in front of 30 million people, who just completed dinner and want to be amused, not challenged. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, the way he does when he's about to give a verdict nobody wants to hear. "Bob Dylan in 1963 had the worst voice I have ever heard on a major stage. Nasal, half the time off-key, lacking strength, vibrato, and breath control. Any A&R man nowadays would think it was a joke if you played that vocal blind. But here's the thing. That voice was attached to the greatest lyricist who ever lived. And those lines were more important to the world in 1963 than a flawless voice. In 2025, we want both. You're gone if you don't have both." Cowell continued to depict the scene in excruciating detail. Consider the audition space. There are 4 judges. Outside, 1,000 people were waiting for their turn. The clock is ticking away, and the lights are bright. A thin young man from Minnesota enters wearing a hat and a work shirt. He says his name is Bob. He starts strumming "The Times They Are A-Changin'." By the second line, Simon's finger is already hovering above the red X. I'd stop him at, "Thank you, Bob, but this isn't working for me." "I'm sorry, darling. I'm not feeling it," Mel B would remark. "I love the message, but the vocal," Howie would say. Heidi would simply shake her head and have a dejected expression. He'd walk out with 4 no's, and the next kid with perfect pitch and a Justin Bieber hairstyle would get 4 yeses and a golden buzzer. Cowell chuckled, but it was the tired laugh of a man who had seen the machine firsthand. There was no cruelty in it. "People think I'd reject Dylan because I don't understand art. Wrong. Since I am familiar with television, I would turn him down. And television doesn't care how brilliant your poetry is if the audience turns the channel." He then did something rare. He accepted the limits of his own reality. Bob Dylan didn't need me. He didn't need a golden buzzer. On a Tuesday night, he didn't require 30 million viewers. He needed Greenwich Village coffee houses, college campuses, and a generation that was outraged enough to listen to every word. My programs need TikTok clips that achieve 100 million views in 24 hours. Different worlds, different rules. Cowell confessed he had tried to hire Dylan once, back in 2008, for a special X Factor charity episode. "We offered him anything he wanted. Private jet, full band, final slot, no judges' comments if he didn't want them." His manager called back and said, "Bob doesn't do television, ever." I respected that. Do it still. He closed the interview with a line that has already been stitched, recited, and tattooed by thousands. Great art and great television are not the same thing. Bob Dylan is the finest artist of my lifetime. He also has one of the worst singing voices of my lifetime. And both of those things can be true at the same time. The internet exploded, of course. Elon Musk tweeted, Simon just spoke the most dangerous truth in music. Greta Van Fleet's Jake Kiska shared a video of himself singing Like a Rolling Stone in his best Dylan approximation with the caption, "Still getting buzzed, Simon." A viral TikTok sound now has 3.2 million videos of people performing bad Dylan imitation, with Cowell's narration saying, "Thank you, next." However, an 80-year-old man from Minnesota posted the most popular comment saying simply, "I was at Newport in 1965 when he went electric, and the folk purists booed him off stage." In 1963, he would have been buzzed by Simon Cowell. The folk purists would have booed him in 1965. Bob continued to make a difference in the world. Some voices aren't suitable for judges. They're created for history. Simon Cowell read that comment on broadcast the next day and, for once, had nothing to say. He just smiled, nodded, and moved on to the next audition. Because even the man who designed the red buzzer knows some artists don't require 4 yeses. All they require is time. And Bob Dylan, he's had 60 years of it, and he's still winning. Before the opening chorus, Simon Cowell would have buzzed Bob Dylan, and Bob Dylan would have walked out, lit a cigarette, and composed the greatest protest song of the century on the back of the rejection letter. That's the distinction. With the help of golden confetti, 90-second auditions, and the thunderous applause of a live audience eager to fall in love right away, one man created an empire. In smoky bars where no one applauded until the song ended and the hush that followed felt like church, the other created a cathedral out of words, one crooked note at a time. One thing Simon is correct about is that before the commercial break, television needs enchantment that can be bottled and sold. Bob never gave anyone that option. He gave them mirrors instead. Mirrors depicting a generation choking on its own destiny, a nation at war with itself, and lovers unable to say farewell without spilling blood on the page. You don't fall in love with that voice in 90 seconds. You fall apart slowly, over decades, until one day you realize the cracked nasal whisper you used to laugh at has become the soundtrack of your entire moral existence. You can dance to dreams that Simon sells. Bob sold nightmares that you had to endure. Simon requires 4 affirmative answers. Bob needed someone in the rear of the room to whisper, "He's saying what we're all thinking," before passing the music around like it was illegal. Because of this, Simon will always be mistaken about Dylan, but this does not make him foolish. It simply forces him to be truthful about the game he plays. Bob Dylan never entered, never needed, and never lost the game. Because some voices aren't attempting to win a competition. They're attempting to wake the world up. Furthermore, you are not given a golden ticket when the world finally opens its eyes. It offers you a Nobel Prize 60 years late when you're on tour at 84, still singing off-key in a voice that sounds like gravel and prophecy. Simon Cowell will continue to create celebrities. Bob Dylan keeps making history. One will fill arenas for a summer. The other encompassed a whole age and all subsequent eras. So yes, Simon would buzz him. The folk purists would boo him. The record labels would approve. The algorithms would bury him. And Bob would keep singing regardless. Because the greatest artists don't audition for the world. They invite auditions from all over the world. And the world, finally, always answers yes, even if it takes a lifetime to admit it. I appreciate your candor, Simon. I appreciate your lack of concern, Bob. It's a loud red buzzer. However, some voices are louder than others, and they never required permission to change things.